Hi, everyone. Welcome to our talk called Greater Than. Taj and I wanted to bring a different point of view on how we see leadership, how we recruit, build teams, and how we work. How each of us are greater than what you see, and how we try to build teams who are greater than the sum of the parts. Taj, we've only been working together for 2.5 years, but honestly, it feels like I've known you for 3 years. I'm just kidding. It feels like we've been together 6 years, and in honoring you, I wore a denim shirt today. Taj wears a denim shirt every day. It's part of his uniform and his black pants. And I think that's what, like great designers, enables him to be creative everywhere else. But we come to Edelman from very different worlds and very different backgrounds. Yet I would say we share philosophies, but also differ on others. So let's talk about our first chapter, which is called Lived Experiences Are Greater Than Agency Experience. Taj, this is your brainchild. Please talk about this.
So, Judy, first, thank you so much. I love being here with you. And it's kind of giving like a little bit of a peek into our Friday conversations that we always have. By working with you, I've learned so much just to own my non-traditional background of how I got into the agency world and kind of marketing and experience design. And so when we think about this talk and the ability to share this with the 3% audience, this idea of a Friday vibe, letting you into our conversation of what it means to just try to improve, try to be better. When I think about sports, I love sports so much. It's how do I hit that jump shot? How do I find that joy in the game? How do I get better every day? And so a lot of our Friday conversations are based on this idea of how do we get better? And from that, we landed on this idea of lived experiences versus agency experience and what that means. I think it's more important than ever for diverse perspectives, diverse lived experiences to be at the table when we talk about solutions for clients in marketing, advertising, product development. So we're super stoked to be able to share with you all today, 4 chapters that are a little bit of a snapshot of our conversations into this, how can we make a positive impact on the world through the work that we do every day with our craft? This first one, lived experience, is greater than agency experience. I love where we landed in this chapter, Judy. So I'm just going to click ahead and let you roll with it.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to go into a speed round. And, one of the things we talked about agency experience is it's something we look at on resumes. So I'm going to give you mine, which is copywriter, associate creative director, group CD, CCO, and CEO. And then finally, the job I have now, which is global CCO. But then the more interesting side of me that really makes and drives me every day in the kind of work that I do, my list would be middle child of immigrant parents, one of 2 Asian families in a really small, tiny town in Canada, underachiever, failed grade 11 math, waitress, usher, security guard, sales associate, and stock photography filer.
You got to talk a little bit about the security guard role, Judy. I'm curious.
I know. I was a security guard for a summer for special events. So if you wanted to get in the free pizza tent, you had to show me your badge. Otherwise, I'd have to take you down. And I don't know why. I didn't have any weapons, but I was going to give you a frowning.
Yeah.
But
nice.
But Taj, it'd be great to hear yours now, your agency experience and lived.
Yeah. So I have a wildly non-traditional background, but if you were to just look at the agency side of things, it goes associate creative director, thinking about creative technology, to creative director, to design director, to then now head of US connected experiences, to then now just recently global chief experience officer. And this guy, top button since day one, high top fade, would have never seen any of that being possible because, I think about just all of the other lived experiences that were ahead of me before this role. And so if you watch Ted Lasso at all, football is life. I was all about soccer. My parents are from Barbados. we landed in the US and moved around a bunch. All of those moving experiences really shaped me. Went on to law school, did immigration law, public policy, opened up after school programs, DJ'd, was a super sneakerhead, as you probably could tell. And like really looked at how those influences, those moments could impact just where I was going. And it's funny because you may say like, oh, like how does a lawyer end up in the creative field? But there's a really interesting dynamic that bridges those two. Like in the law, you might be thinking about like really complicated problems and simplifying them so that people can act on them. And in design and experience design specifically, it's taking these like really complex challenges and like simplifying them so that they become powerful solutions for people. And so, you know, it's wild, it's different. You know, I didn't go to your typical ad school or design school, all self-taught, but like those non-traditional experiences really shaped how I approach the work today.
That's so true. And so talk a little bit about how that influences how you hire. You know, you and I are working on a project together right now. You're talking about somebody you just hired with a very different background from what, you know, normal agencies hire from.
Right. You know, so when you think about like human-centered design thinking and having empathy for the challenge that's ahead, I think the greatest skill set to that approach is building the skill of empathy and having that diverse background, those lived experiences, knowing what it feels like to be in different moments actually makes you a better practitioner. And so as agencies are thinking about their teams that they're casting, lived experience and the same perspectives, we're going to keep generating the same solution. So, you know, working with you, Judy, I've just loved the opportunity to really be able to look outside of the norm, to really like break down, like not just like, oh, let's keep looking at that same pipeline. Like, how do we look at like, you know, folks that have different lived perspectives when it comes to race, gender, age, location, all of those really important attributes that I think lend themselves to coming up with unique solutions and, you know, be able to move the world to a better place.
I totally agree. And even when we're trying to cast for a project,
Yeah.
we'll just bring in some of the most random people who can bring a really different perspective to everything that we're doing. And I would say that the two things that I really look for when I'm hiring is that curiosity and that spirit of learning. Like when you look at a resume and people have, you know, explored different things throughout their lifetime and have different experiences, I find are the most interesting and often the most open in terms of how they solve problems.
And, you know, I remember a good friend of mine just being like, in life, just be interesting. And I think, you know, that curiosity and those different experiences make for being a better teammate, you know, having a better understanding of the folks you're working with, which like nicely takes us into our second topic, which is, you know, EQ is greater than IQ. And so, Judy, you've like definitely schooled me on this a ton, and I love it. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about how you look at EQ when you're looking for candidates and how you
Oh,
rank that?
absolutely. And okay, so Taj and I were talking about this topic and I said, okay, Taj, clearly you're way smarter than I am. You know, I went to the university who accepted me, and, you know, Taj is went to law school and was a lawyer. So, so I would say that it's a given that IQ and talent is there in people that we are looking at recruiting, but really we think of the understated side is EQ, and people have started talking more about that. But, you know, in looking at, you know, a team and how we staff teams, I think about teammates. So who will be a good teammate and make everyone better? And it's not unlike how I look at my life mate. You know, it's great, you know, when you're in love and things are going really well, but you know, who's going to be there when things go off the rails? And that's when EQ is really important, to have that person who has your back. You know, EQ is about building that trust in your team, owning your mistakes, you know, the really important things about having a good teammate.
Yeah, I love that point about the teammate. And like one of my favorite examples of like strong EQ over IQ per se is like I don't know, I think we've talked about this, Judy, but for the audience, if you haven't seen this, look up this clip. It's Steve Kerr talking to Steph Curry when Steph Curry's not having its best game. Shout out to Golden State real quick. They're 2-0 right now. They had a big win. But I just love how Steve recognized that Steph was having a difficult time. He was missing all kinds of shots and he was really getting down on himself. And there's this like clip where you see Steve looking at the line stats and saying to Steph, like, all right, we know things aren't dropping for you today, but here's all the ways that you're making impact in the game. And it was just like a beautiful moment of encouragement that was authentic and honest. It wasn't like, you know, dismissing the fact that things weren't going well, but it was just leaning in on like, you still can make an impact. And that emotional kind of quotient, that idea that he was recognizing, like, we all see what's happening here, but like, how do we motivate you to get out there and just do the best you can? I love that. And like, when I think about teams, those are the kind of teammates I want to be around, that are able to be vulnerable and transparent and really push on this idea of like, we're here together. Let's figure out how we can impact the game no matter what's happening. So this is one of my favorite topics, Judy. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really listening to people and observing your team and the vibe. And, you know, I always talk about like leadership is about, you're setting the tone for that. And, you know, somebody once told me it is about being high up on your mood ladder. Like even when you're having a really crappy day, you got to bring it for your team, and just, you know, be a good teammate and bring everybody along.
I love
that. And I think that you're incredible at that. We should jump into the next topic because I think we're going to run out of time.
Let's do it. So I love what you're just talking about with leadership and leader. Like, go for it.
Yeah. So this leadership is greater than being a leader. And this is about, you know, it's not about you, it's about the team. And, you know, there are different styles of leaderships where there are people who are talking about themselves, but I think that both you and I share this philosophy that it is about making your team better. And we've really started to talk a lot about that. And Taj, I would say that, you know, everyone you work with feels that, like, you know, everyone feels included, everyone feels heard, and you create this contagious environment. And, you know, everybody's always trying to work with you. Like, can we get Taj? It'd be great for you to talk about that, your leadership style.
Oh, you got it. And, you know, I only feel that way because you make it completely safe to be 100% yourself. So right back at you, pal. When I think about leadership, it reminds me of this one moment. My cousins from Barbados used to come and visit me every summer. And my mom doesn't believe in AC. She just wants regular air to breeze through the house. And I'll never forget, we were in my room, super hot. We had gone to Blockbuster and rented this game, Flashback. So 3 cousins, I was the oldest. I used to fancy myself a leader, but I wasn't in this moment. My youngest cousin was a true like leader because he was exhibiting this idea of leadership. We were trying to beat this game called Flashback. We hit a challenge. The cousin that was like the middle age between the 3 of us, he had thrown a remote, I had thrown a remote, I was out, but my youngest cousin just continued to find joy in this game. And it was the Nintendo, it was like Flashback, one of the greatest video games of all time. And he was just dying every time. He was never winning. But then eventually he broke through and we lost it. Like, it made our day because we were trying to beat the game in the 24-hour rental period that we had it. But like that moment, seeing Anwar have so much joy, even when things weren't going right, was like the leadership the 3 of us needed to be able to move forward. And so like, I always think about that when we're in brainstorms or we're in those challenging scenarios where like, you feel like you just can't break through or it's frustrating. This idea of like, can you bring clarity? Can you bring energy? And it doesn't always have to be super positive, but just a moving energy to get people to like think about that next step. And can you just like deliver on whatever it is that you've promised? And so Anwar, my youngest cousin, shout out to him. He was able to deliver on all 3 of those because he just found the joy even in those toughest moments and exuded that so that all of us could participate. So that's always been a huge inspiration for me in terms of like what leadership and teamwork looks like. And,
yeah, for sure.
You
We were sorry.
No, go after you.
You know, we were talking about that notion of leadership and having, each other's back. And that, I think that that's a really important part of it, is feeling safe and feeling like you're all on that same path. And I was telling Taj this story about when at one of my jobs, when I was chief creative, we had done a parody of a commercial for a competitor anyway, it was a parody ad, and it was a lot of, it was just for fun. And our sister agency in the US had this client, and this client didn't find it funny. And they called the agency and said, we are really offended and we want you to take action. So the mothership called and said, we need to fire the copywriter who did this. We need to show the client a sign that we're very serious and we're taking this seriously. And so the word came down to me is like, you have to go and fire that copywriter. And I said, well, we're not doing that. I'm not telling you who did it. And they said, well, we have to. And I said, well, I told them to write it. So you're going to have to fire me. And there was this like stare down of like, we can't fire you. We just tell us who the copywriter is. I mean, what's the big deal? And I said, what's the big deal? I told him to do it. So if anybody gets fired, I have to be the one who gets fired. And so my CEO went to our US office and said, you know what, you're going to have to take us both out, both the CEO and the CCO. And they said, this is like the craziest conversation we've ever had. But anyway, there's a file on me now for, something that was questionable, I'll say. But like, that's leadership. Is I was forever had my CEO's back. It was like, whatever you do, I'm all in because I believe in you. And we're on the same side. And the copywriter said to me, I will always work for you forever, because of the trust that we built. And so the leadership piece is really taking that team mentality seriously and building that trust.
I love that, Judy. And I feel like the creative team at Edelman feels that safety all the time, specifically like learning from that story. I feel like, being creative is like a vulnerable exercise,
Yeah.
At times. So having that support is everything, which, takes us to our second, like our last topic, or chapter 4, you are greater than your circumstances and what that means. And so, gee, I was just curious, like, what are those moments you've had where like maybe things have felt like really challenging, but because you were able to see beyond that, beyond your swim lane, and maybe like see the whole pool, like how did you break through?
Yeah, I think it is really, the you and the way people see you, or the way that you believe in yourself is greater than your circumstance. And I would say that the biggest piece for me is about accountability and taking responsibility. Because if you find yourself in a circumstance, I go, what are you going to do about it? And, leadership is about doing something, and not just sitting back and saying, well, this is really screwed up. Like, what are we going to do now? It is the action part of the you that is really shows what you're made of. And there's like a billion examples of like times when I felt like I was really not doing well. But I always go back, I talk to myself a lot, and I'll say, okay, JJ, like pull your shit together. This is not your first rodeo. You got to figure this out. Right. And it is, for me, I never feel alone. And I always tell my team, and, I always say, don't feel alone, reach out and we will jump in and help. And I think that's really that spirit of you're not alone.
Yeah.
But what about you? Like you've told me this incredible story about how someone saw you or your circumstance.
Yeah. So one of my best buds, Reid, we were in a studio situation together where he was doing his art, which was videography, and I was just trying to break through as a creative. And we had this pack where it was like, instead of like always looking for the wins, it was like, how could we rack up the most no's, like be as audacious as possible to just get that, like, what, you guys don't believe? No. But like what ended up being the win was the experience, you know, and just racking up as many experiences as possible. So when I think back to like, you know, like our header, our headline of like lived experience is greater than agency experience, the true key is gaining as many experiences as possible, because none of this is linear. It's like, you know, the idea of like you meet that right person to help you network or understand something that you didn't understand about yourself, which opens up another door, which opens up another door. And so really going for the experiences regardless of the win or lose, but more just to be like, I've got this and I've learned from it, is something that I think is incredibly valuable and helped me kind of push through the circumstance and just own who I am. But your point about never being alone is so key. And so this is something that I think like we also value. So, you know, Judy and I were talking, we were like, what would it be like if more folks could join us on those like Friday calls to just be able to, you know, rack up experiences, to share what we're going through, to just remember that you're not alone. We can figure this out together. So drum roll, we've got join us for Friday Vibes. So we've got open office hours with Judy and myself, you know, season 1, because we, you know, I'm just like watching all the shows. So seasons are good. So season 1, 3 30-minute sessions to pick our brains, strategize, and support one another. And it's really just an open call. Email us at FridayVibes@Edelman to reserve a spot. We can't wait to meet you. And I hope that everybody out there gets a little bit of the light that I get to get by talking to Judy on Fridays. Judy, I just absolutely
same
love
here.
It's the best.
Same here. I mean, it's such a, like, you give me such energy, Taj. And sometimes on Fridays, we'll just talk sneakers and show each other the latest sneaker that we bought. But that's all part of the vibe. Yes, please join us for Greater Than. And we'd love to pick your brain. You know, we want to hear from you. Definitely. So thank you everyone for joining us. And we hope you're having a great fall, winter.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Judy, thank you.
Thanks, Taj.